Hi, this is a video presentation of one way to make the most advanced guitar work. This is not a tutorial or a formula, only a model over a creative process in service of the goal of crafting a uniquely advanced musical work. It's also a presentation to what I call the Pro Tools approach to composition, and to highlight the creative process of something I call Free-Constructivity, its practice and method. The thinking is, if you change the way you go about making music, if you do it right, you change the music as a result, and more musical ideas can be presented in different levels of maturity. By the Pro Tools approach to composition is meant the specialist use of finding and solving the specific challenges of making unusual music by using the crafting tool of Pro Tools. And by Free-Constructivity is meant a feeling of vast freedom in search for new aesthetical grounds, and in this adventure finding the focus of the joyfully inspirational act of composing in this way. To give some context in the tonal language I will be aiming for in this work, I have as reference and inspiration 4 works in mind. You can look them up on YouTube. They are These 4 works holds a very high expressionistic aesthetics that I am aiming for, and by listening and learning very generally and intuitively from them, I hope to in some aspect create something new. It will be a work of intuition. The work that I have set myself on making will be sculptured from the classical, or call it flamenco guitar, as the instrumental source, then combined with percussion samples. I will also show 2 other sources of material that will not be used in this composition. These 2 instruments are played by using extended technique played on a multi-string guitar, and also an extended technique played on upright piano. How they are played and recorded will be briefly shown in the course of this presentation, but again, they will not be part of this composition. The process starts with the making and recording of the material that will be in play later in the final creative part within Pro Tools. This playing is improvisational in direct proportion to how non-reproducible the act of creating and recording the material is. So, for example, the use of classical guitar is a result of many years of listening when playing and the intuitive search for expressive meaning. So there is much experience that comes into play. While on the other hand, some of the use of invented extended techniques are more wild and unreproducible. But even so, these 2 are apt for being controlled and are to a certain extent the result of experience within an improvisational approach. The second step in this presentation will be to show briefly some of the workflow in Pro Tools. I view Pro Tools as an interactive canvas or music score that have many communalities with the process of classical painting. You have the palette, or the techniques, the sketching of components and development, then the main work of the combining of these sketchings to larger structures and so on, and the ongoing judgment and correcting phase of dynamics, rhythm, melody, and the work's overall expressive feel. So like in sculpture or painting, you have visual and audible view of the parts and the whole at all times when making sensible alteration and global decisions throughout the course of the composition. To start with, here are some glimpses of creating the material that will be later used in the composition from the classical guitar. It's a search for expressive chords. I try to view the guitar as instrumental and free as possible. So the basic thing is that within the Pro Tools compositional approach, any chord progression is open as a possibility. So first you have many different tunings of the guitar, the use of 1 or up to 3 capos on the guitar neck. Then you would want to try to find any interesting music in a certain tuning before you change to the next tuning of the guitar. arpeggios. That means in this context that scales or singular notes will be later shown how they combine and are made more alive and expressive by creating greater density, fluidity and speed or impact in Pro Tools than they have in the recording of them. Some extended techniques for multi-string guitar. If you are interested, I have made a longer presentation of many invented extended techniques for the multi-string guitar. You can find it on YouTube by writing in the YouTube search engine extended techniques Rickard Trillo. I also link to it for this video on YouTube. point to make about this whole process is that it can seem like there is much room for the accidental. It's quite the opposite. On the Pro Tool level, the process gives you the possibility to exact much more control over selected chords and material, while on another level leaving room for the accidental. There is nothing inherently arbitrary, just the opposite. The more experience you have with composing this way, the more clarity of aim you can achieve. So when using the techniques invented or developed, they are not mechanical techniques that are just applied arbitrarily. Pro Tool is a tool, and among other things, that means that there is a step-by-step process with different stages. This is to say that something are outside of Pro Tools, like for example the act of creating the material. They are first thought up in the context of playing the guitar, and that moment is like any traditional selection and composing for a given instrument. And in Pro Tools on the canvas or score level, they are again open to a multitude of ways of selection and crafting to form composite musical events and ideas. There is nothing that impedes the goal of a singular conception, if that is what one wants to pursue. For example, if your aim is to be guided by your educational musical capital, of music theory, personally developed or otherwise, then that is an open possibility you could pursue. That while using some of these tools, that would be a mechanical or deterministic hindrance, deterministical hindrance, only in a superficial way. To clarify, the tools can be an extension of composing through intuition, or a way to try out materials that are guided by music theory, or an ability to think abstractly that are too complicated to only imagine in your head. Now, I have placed more than 10 hours of recordings, more than 200 of them, into the Pro Tools session. And now begins the most daunting and repetitive task, which I call old school Pro Tooling. To listen to all the hours of recordings and selecting as much as possible that is relevant to the overall idea of how the composition should sound like. Finally, all the bearish selection have been done, and the moment of revelation begins. This is the most creative stage of this process, but also the one where the most fatal flaws can be committed. It could be called sound blindness. To really hear the music, its continuity, verity and true statements, one has to perceive the music with fresh ears. I find it helpful to take a break in between composing and listen to some fine crafted music, be it traditional classical music, or more specific, the 4 works of reference music that I mentioned in the beginning. Now, the goal to make the most advanced guitar music is, if not easy, relatively easy. Of course, the much harder aim would be to make the most interesting sounding guitar work that has ever been written. But that goal is a much more elusive challenge. My goal here is only to the best of my abilities to approximate that goal by putting the material I have at hand to the best use. I will not show in this video the creative part of composing, and that is mainly because it's too long to fit in this presentation. And the other reason is that nothing explicit can be shown except the moving of parts, because the intuitive work takes place in the head, while I'm listening and sorting out the selection of materials I finally use. Here is the final session, where over 10 hours of recording became about 3 minutes of composed music. Now let's listen to the whole work.
It rakes the pelt of his cape and illuminates holes in contemplation. Divinity knew his brain heat and his trial. Through tears there is his labor in this world, his certain joy.
I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I also hope that it can inspire others to go beyond this achievement so that new interesting music can be heard. Thank you for watching.